My name is Elena Ward, and I am 26 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've been introduced as someone else's something. Maya's friend. Maya's sidekick. Maya's shadow. That word shadow haunted me. And the worst part, it didn't come from strangers. Came from the very person I trusted most. The moment is burned into my memory. We were at a rooftop party, the kind of place that smelled of champagne and perfume, the skyline stretching like a jeweled necklace around us. I had taken time that night, carefully curling my hair, picking out a dress that shimmered in the city lights. For once, I wanted to feel like I belonged, like I wasn't just the friend hovering at the edges. Maya swept into the room like she always did, soaking up the spotlight without even trying. She had that kind of laugh that turned heads, that way of touching people's arms as if she had known them forever. And people loved her for it. I stood by her side, clutching my drink, smiling politely as she introduced me to her co-workers. "This is Elena," Maya said, her lips curling into a grin that wasn't quite kind. "She's my shadow. Always right there behind me." The group laughed, like it was a joke, like it was harmless. But inside the words sliced deep. Her shadow. I felt my cheeks burn, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to disappear right then, not because I was her shadow, but because she had confirmed it in front of everyone. She had taken all my quiet loyalty, all the times I stood by her side, and reduced me to nothing but an accessory. When I excused myself to the bathroom, I leaned against the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The music thumped through the walls, the bass rattling against my ribs. My eyes glistened with tears I refused to let fall. "She doesn't mean it," I whispered to myself. "She's just joking." But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. Maya had meant every word. That night, I stood at the edge of the party, watching her laugh and glitter like she owned the world. And for the first time, something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry yet. Not fully. But I was awake. Because when someone you love calls you their shadow, you start to wonder what your life might look like if you finally stepped into the light. And that night I promised myself, one day she'd regret ever dimming me. The music swelled, Maya's laughter rang out, and I walked out of that party with my head held high, not knowing that my moment of transformation had already begun. Hang on, before I tell you what happened next, make sure you've subscribed and left your thoughts in the comments. This part gets intense. People always say friendships that start young are unbreakable. They picture two little girls holding hands on the playground, promising to be best friends forever. And that was us, me and Maya. I was the quiet one, the girl with scraped knees and books always tucked under her arm. She was the loud one, with braids flying and a laugh that seemed too big for her small body. From the start, people gravitated toward her. She had a kind of gravity I could never match, and maybe that's why I clung to her. She made me feel seen. Least at first. In middle school, she declared us inseparable. We wore matching bracelets, shared secrets, and planned futures where we'd live in the same city, work at the same company, maybe even marry brothers so we'd never be apart. I believed her. But over time the cracks started showing. In high school, when she joined the cheer squad, I stayed in the library. But she always pulled me into her spotlight. "This is Elena," she'd say to her new friends. "She's the smart one." First it felt like a compliment. But it always carried an edge, as if my value existed only in contrast to her. She was the pretty one, the popular one, and I was the clever, reliable backup. Then came college. We applied together, but only one of us got into her dream school, her. I chose a different path, smaller and quieter, but when she called me late at night from crowded parties, slurring words about how much she missed me, I still believed we were equal. The truth. I was holding on to a fantasy while she was building an empire, one where I was always her supporting role. After graduation, we both moved to the city. I found a job in marketing, long hours and little pay, but I was proud of it. Maya, of course, seemed to glide effortlessly into a better position. She always knew someone who knew someone, always had connections that landed her where she wanted to be. We still met for dinners, birthdays, and Sunday brunches. First, it was comforting. But then came the subtle comments, the ones only I seemed to notice. "You're so lucky you don't care about fashion, Elena," she'd say, sipping wine across the table. "Imagine how much money you save not keeping up." Or, "You're great at editing my presentations. I don't know what I'd do without you." I laughed along. I told myself she meant well. But every remark stacked like bricks, building a wall between who I thought she was and who she had become. It wasn't just words. It was the way she monopolized conversations, retold my stories as if they were hers, and brushed me off when I tried to share accomplishments. When I got a small promotion at work, she smiled and said, "That's cute. Wait until you're at my level." The night of the rooftop party wasn't the first time she called me her shadow. It was just the first time she said it out loud to others. And as I sat awake after that night, staring at the ceiling of my tiny apartment, memories unraveled one by one. Every time she dimmed me, every time I let it slide, I realized this wasn't a friendship built on love. It was built on her need to shine brighter, and my willingness to stand in the dark. But I wasn't willing anymore. That promise I whispered to myself, that one day she'd regret it, was no longer just a fleeting thought. It was the beginning of something I couldn't yet name. And soon, Maya would learn that shadows don't disappear when the lights go out. Sometimes they rise up and swallow the very thing that cast them. Before we move on, take a second to hit subscribe and drop a comment. I'd love to hear what you think so far. Betrayal doesn't always come as a sudden strike. Sometimes it seeps in quietly, until one day you realize the knife is already lodged deep in your back. For me, the breaking point came at work. Maya and I had ended up in the same industry, though in different companies. At first, it felt comforting, almost poetic. Two girls from the same small town making their way in the city together. We joked about taking over boardrooms one day. But while I clawed my way through late nights and endless reports, Maya seemed to rise with half the effort. And still I stayed by her side. Until the Jacobs account. It was a big project at my firm, one that could make or break a career. I had poured months of research into it. Late-night brainstorming, weekends hunched over my laptop, endless coffee-fueled drafts. It wasn't just work. It was my chance to prove I wasn't anyone's shadow. But then something strange happened. At a networking event, I overheard whispers. "Did you see Maya's pitch? Brilliant work. She's unstoppable." I froze, wine glass trembling in my hand. Maya's pitch. Jacob's account. I hadn't told her the details, at least not directly. But she knew enough from our conversations over drinks, when I vented about challenges and shared little victories. She had listened, smiled, and nodded, all the while gathering ammunition. And she used it. 2 weeks later, she announced she had secured the Jacobs contract for her firm, with slides eerily similar to mine. Ideas I had sweated over now came from her glossy lips, dressed up as her brilliance. When I confronted her over coffee, my voice shaking with anger, she barely blinked. "Don't be dramatic," she said, stirring her latte like we were discussing the weather. "It's business. Besides, you'll get your shot one day. You're good at support roles. That's your strength." Support roles. Shadow. Useless. Her words twisted like barbed wire around my chest. I wanted to scream, to hurl my cup against the wall, but all I could manage was a whisper. "You stole from me." She leaned back, eyes gleaming. "I improved on what you had. That's not stealing, that's survival." That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment, the silence louder than any insult. My notes, drafts, and sketches for Jacobs lay scattered around me like the pieces of a shattered dream. She had taken what was mine, my work, my future, and turned it into her trophy. But the worst part wasn't just the theft. It was the smug certainty in her voice. She truly believed I would never rise above her. And for a moment I believed it too. I stared at my reflection in the darkened window, eyes hollow, face pale, and I thought, maybe she's right. Maybe I'm destined to be nothing more than her shadow. But then something shifted. Because as much as her betrayal broke me, it also lit something inside me. A fire I had buried under years of silence and second place. I realized I had two choices: remain in the corner, invisible, or step fully into the light and let her choke on the brightness she tried to steal from me. And in that moment my lowest point became my turning point. Maya had drawn first blood. She thought she had won. But she had no idea what was coming. Before we go any further, click subscribe and let me know in the comments. What would you have done in my shoes? Revenge doesn't always come in the form of grand gestures. Sometimes it begins in silence, when you stop explaining yourself and start taking careful notes. After Maya stole the Jacobs account, I realized I couldn't fight her on her terms. She thrived in shortcuts, deception, and manipulation. If I tried to play her game, I would lose. I needed to create a battlefield she couldn't control. So I did what I'd always done best: I worked. But this time I worked in secret. I began by rebuilding myself piece by piece. I stayed late at the office, but I stopped telling Maya about it. I volunteered for projects others thought were too difficult or risky, the kind that required patience, resilience, and vision. Slowly, I carved a reputation not as a sidekick, but as someone who could carry the weight alone. Meanwhile, I let Maya believe I was retreating. When we met for coffee, I smiled and nodded as she bragged about her new clothes, her firm's recognition, her endless stream of admirers. I let her think she was winning. That was the beauty of it. She didn't see me coming. But I was watching her carefully. I noticed how she craved attention at every networking event. How she repeated the same rehearsed stories until even the most polite listeners began to lose interest. I saw her cut corners at work, delegating tasks she didn't understand, taking credit for results she hadn't earned. The cracks in her perfect image widened with every careless move. And I kept the receipts, screenshots, emails, witnesses who trusted me more than they trusted her. Quietly, I gathered proof of the lies she had woven, of the shortcuts she took, of the way she clawed her way up on the backs of others. At the same time, I invested in myself. I took courses after work, marketing, strategy, leadership, funded by the very paycheck I once thought was too small to matter. I saved every dollar I could, skipping nights out, while Maya flaunted new handbags and designer heels she could barely afford. The more she fed her image, the hungrier I became for something real. Then came the opportunity one had been waiting for. A senior partner at my firm announced she was leaving to start her own company, an innovative startup that would require fresh leadership and daring ideas. She pulled me aside one evening after a long meeting and said, "I've watched you. You don't just work hard, you work smart. I want you on my team." It was the chance of a lifetime, and I grabbed it with both hands. I didn't tell Maya. She thought I was still stuck in the same position, still her shadow, still too ordinary to matter. And that ignorance was the sharpest weapon I could have asked for. Because while she was polishing her image and clinging to a fading spotlight, I was quietly stepping into a brighter one of my own. Every step I took toward building this new chapter was fueled by her betrayal. Every late night, every page of notes, every meeting where I held my head high. It was all leading to a single moment. The moment when I would no longer be her shadow. The moment when she would finally see me, not in her light but in my own. And when that day came, she wouldn't just lose. She would crumble. Because the truth I was holding on to wasn't just about her lies. It was about who I had become without her. And soon everyone would see it. The night of the industry gala arrived like the climax of a story I'd been writing in silence for years. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, the air thick with perfume, ambition, and carefully rehearsed smiles. This was the kind of event Maya lived for. the stage where she could dazzle, network, and remind everyone she was the star. I knew she'd be there. Counted on it. I wore a dress I had bought with my first bonus from the new startup, elegant but understated, a reflection of the woman I had become. Not flashy, not desperate, just confident. The kind of confidence that doesn't need to scream to be noticed. When Maya spotted me across the room, her smirk froze for just a moment. She wasn't expecting me. Not here. Not like this. I let her approach, her heels clicking like a metronome of vanity. "Well, look who it is," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. I didn't realize they were letting assistants into these things now. Smiled calm. I didn't realize they were still giving out invites for plagiarism either. But then, I suppose we all have our surprises. Her eyes narrowed, but she brushed it off, laughing too loudly. "Still bitter, are we? You should let it go, darling. Not everyone can shine." I leaned in, my voice low enough for only her to hear. "No, Maya. Not everyone can shine. But I do. And tonight, everyone will see it." And then it began. The startup's founder, my mentor, took the stage to introduce our team. She called my name not once but several times, crediting me with strategies, campaigns, and innovations that had pushed us forward in record time. Applause filled the room, and as I walked up to the stage, I caught Maya's face. Pale, frozen, her champagne glass trembling in her hand. But I wasn't done. Because the proof I'd collected of her lies, the stolen work, the manipulation, it had already made its way to the firm's board earlier that week. A carefully timed email, a neat folder of evidence, and a polite note suggesting they investigate before promoting someone who thrived on dishonesty. The fallout was swift. By the time the gala ended, whispers filled the room. Colleagues exchanged glances, their admiration for Maya curdling into suspicion. I didn't have to expose her publicly. The truth was already burning through her carefully constructed facade, faster than she could contain it. I left her standing there, surrounded by murmurs, her smile faltering as the realization hit. She wasn't the star anymore. She was a scandal waiting to erupt. Walking out into the night air, I felt no pity. She had called me her shadow, treated me like her audience, her servant, her prop. But shadows don't disappear when the light moves. They simply find their own. And I had. In the weeks that followed, Maya's reputation crumbled. She lost clients, lost friends, lost the spotlight she had clung to so desperately. And me. Thrive. My work spoke for itself, and for the first time people saw me as I was. Not as her shadow, but as my own person. The best part. I never had to scream, never had to humiliate her with theatrics. I simply let the truth breathe. And it was enough to suffocate her. So, when I think back on those years, the endless times she called me her shadow, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel triumph. Because I know that the woman she tried to bury is the woman who rose higher than she ever dreamed. And now, when she hears my name, it's not in the shadow of hers. It's in the light she'll never touch.